All right, welcome. My name is Belinda Glenn, and I'm here with Weston Childers. He's the owner and director at COMV Productions in Salt Lake City, Utah. And welcome, Weston.
Hey, thanks, Belinda.
Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah.
So the way we know each other is I auditioned for a film that you guys were doing like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, back in, 5 or 6 years ago.
And as independent filmmakers do, you know, that it was a project that kind of got shelved, and it was, you know, back in the early days of kind of just starting getting your wings. And so you guys cast me, and then recently I came on, and I'm actually working with you doing locations and casting.
Location scouting and casting directing. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. So that's just a little introduction into how we know each other.
Yeah.
And then I guess to start off with, I guess I'll just say, where are you from?
So originally, I'm from Colorado.
Okay.
And then moved to the Utah area in 2011.
Okay, for college?
So I had to come here to study business at a business college.
Okay, so that leads me into how you got into film. Because did you originally go to study film, or what?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in storytelling. Growing up, I always loved the idea of telling stories. I always tell people, like, you can tell what you're born to do by what did you get in trouble for the most growing up.
Okay.
And so, like, for me, I got in trouble for talking too much, right? Telling stories too much. Sometimes lying, which is elaboration of stories, right? So I was really big into storytelling. I used to build like little cameras out of cardboard and walk around and pretend like I was filming people. So it was always inherently there.
Did you like reading stories and watching stories on TV?
I like telling stories. So kind of inherently, I enjoyed things with stories. So watching movies. I like books, but I tend to kind of lean more towards kind of the logical side of me leans more towards like historical type books.
Oh, okay.
Not as much. I don't
so much into Goosebumps and
No, never.
But
it kind of always like in terms of TV shows. What's interesting is like growing up, TV shows I loved like Modern Marvels, Bob the Builder, things that were actually more like technically based.
Okay.
But then like in my own imagination and stuff, I would be writing stories that were more narrative. So it's like I didn't consume a lot of narrative, but I loved like telling narrative type stuff.
Okay.
And so from there, my buddies and I wanted to, like, everything always was around stories. So it was like for a while I wanted to be a truck driver and have an art studio in the back of my truck and like tell stories through art and share it.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
then later in life, I was like, I don't want to be a truck driver.
Yeah.
And then
that would be a very unique one to pull off. Yeah. But that's a cool idea.
And then from there, it drifted into creating video games because my buddy and I got really into video games. I was like, cool, let's find a way to tell stories through video games. Because at the time, there were video games with stories, but it wasn't as prominent.
Okay.
And then there was kind of a big hurdle for us to get into that at the time because there wasn't like the App Store or a lot of kind of relatively easy ways to get into distribution. And so my buddy had filmed something in high school, and I was like, holy crap, you like edit it together and put music and text to it. And from there, it was like, well, let's try doing video. And so then we started telling stories through video. So always was interested in going towards film.
Okay. And yeah, I know a lot of filmmakers have that early propensity to want to kind of get in and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think everybody who gets into what they love doing, like, even when talking to my dad, who's a doctor, he's somewhere in his life, he tends to usually be around like the 5th or 4th grade, where there became a passion of his to like help people. And, he was like caring for people who got hurt on the playground. And so like that's what propelled him to be a doctor. And so it's
something will tie in.
Something around that time period of life always kind of happens.
That makes sense. So you went to college to study business, which is not film.
That is true.
So let's hear the story about that.
So when I was trying to figure out where to go to kind of move further on in my career, I had done a whole bunch of productions through high school.
Okay.
And with
Film productions, as in like with your friends?
Yeah, with friends for school classes, like easiest way to get an A
Oh.
is when it's like, hey, you got to write an essay. It's like, well, how about I make a movie?
Oh,
And so like that's
man.
what we would do. And so we
I wish
just
I
get,
knew that back in
yeah,
high school.
It was great. So we'd get like A's in projects, and teachers loved us.
Oh, okay. So you actually were executing projects and
All the
finishing
time.
them that
Yeah.
were good enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, a lot of us who did it at that age kind of like threw together these funny things and
Yeah,
watched
and-
them with our friends, and I'm sure you did that too.
Yeah,
but-
and still the quality is like sometimes hit or miss. But
Yeah.
one thing for me and my friends that I was with was I would look at the stuff that we produce and be like, why does it not look as good as this Hollywood film? And so it became a really big drive of mine of reverse engineering and being like, okay, what makes it look like this? So then we started experimenting with, how do we get more depth of field? And we would zoom in all the way on the camera, even though they're really cheap cameras, but then we could start getting like the background out of focus. So now we started shooting everything with the camera completely zoomed in from like 20, 30 feet away, but it looked like a cinematic lens, and then started figuring out frame rate stuff and started figuring out lighting and just reverse engineering everything.
Yeah, that's one thing I've actually recently learned myself when it comes to film, and like just even doing interviews like this, or doing my own auditions from my bedroom, or, you know, like people as the public, we're not really aware that there's certain things that make something look the way it looks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like I just watched a tutorial on the lighting on a film set, and they've got, you know, one here, one from the back. You know, it's all of it is all orchestrated, and it's all very kind of complex, kind of simple.
Yeah.
But you know, you're kind of you don't realize like there's reasons why you know certain things look anyways.
Yeah, it's the technique of it. And
Yeah.
so we were trying to figure out like what was that technique. So in high school, you know, I'd done a number of projects that won awards or that won money for our school and had a lot of success with it. So already had success, you know, even had like online contests that we'd entered into, and we had one film that got like a nomination for best film for the decade on this like online organization.
Nice.
So there was a lot of success there. So it was like, okay, where do I go next?
Okay.
So with that, I went to a number of film schools, some very prestigious ones, and showed them my work from high school. And they were like,
Okay.
wow, that's really good. That's actually as good, if not in some cases better than some of our graduates.
Oh.
And it was like, okay, cool.
I've never heard this story.
And so
This
it's like,
is really
it was like,
interesting.
cool, does that mean I can get in? And they're like, no, that means that you still have to go through the same application process. Like, it didn't give me any benefit.
Okay.
And so my thought process is like, okay, so I got to go through 2 years of normal schooling in this college, just so I then can be capable of applying towards, you know, like the master's program in film. And then I have to go through 2 years of that before I can graduate.
To get to the point I'm already at.
To get to the point that I'm already at, right? So it was like, what's the point? And, you know, we're
Right.
looking at, some of the schools I looked at were like 70 grand a semester. You know, some of the schools I
Wow.
looked at were like 70 grand for the total thing, but it's like, that's a lot of money. So it was that thought process of, that doesn't get me any further ahead.
Okay.
And I was kind of bummed because I didn't know where to go. And I was like, I felt like there was stuff that I wanted to learn and wanted to move forward, but realized that the film school path for me wasn't going to provide anything. That was
Okay.
going to be in addition to.
I did not know any of this.
Yeah.
I'm learning this right now.
So
Most people, you know, they kind of like bumbled into it later,
Yeah.
or, you know.
Yeah, so like
cool.
I tend to be very focused, and so it's like trying to have a vision for where am I going in the next 5 years. So that was kind of what it was. It's like, where are we getting in the next 5 years?
Okay.
So with that, I saw a movie that it's called Wall Street Money Never Sleeps with Shia LaBeouf.
Okay.
Not the first Wall Street. The first one I do not recommend. It's very,
Okay.
very crass.
Are you in Wolf of Wall Street?
No. That's
Okay.
also very crass.
That's a lot
but
more recent.
Yeah, that's
You're
what
talking back.
This is a little bit further. This is 2000. I think 2011 or 2010.
Okay.
Wolf of Wall Street was like 15 or something like
Yeah.
that. But this movie was really interesting in it, and I'm not a Wall Street person. Like, I hate stocks and things like that. So I was really hesitant to watch this movie. But I just kind of had this like feeling in my conscience that was like, you got to see this movie. It's like, okay. So I watched it. And
Did someone recommend it to you, or like
No.
what? You just saw it somewhere and like, I
Yeah,
should watch
like
it?
my buddy and I, we were gonna go watch Interstellar. I think
Okay.
Interstellar had come out at the same time. No, not Interstellar. Inception by Christopher Nolan.
Oh, okay. I was like, is Interstellar that old?
No,
Yeah.
so
No.
we were going to go see Inception.
Right.
And the movie theater we went to, the showtime was wrong. And I was like, oh man, we could either wait for here for like 2 hours and watch it, or we could go see another movie. And so there was
Oh.
like Social Network and Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I'm kind of curious about Social Network. And
Yeah, a lot
I-
of people were talking about it back
Yeah,
then.
and I was like, but I could really care less about Wall Street. Like, don't want to see that at all. But I had this like feeling that was like, you got to go see Wall Street.
Interesting. Okay.
Which
Cool.
we'll come back to that story later because
Okay.
I'm really glad that I didn't see Social Network because basically I find that movies influence us a lot. And so, especially for me, so I try to be very careful with like the movies that I watch because
Yeah.
I know the thoughts from them can influence me very greatly.
Okay.
And so Wall Street influenced me very greatly in the fact of when I finished watching the movie, I realized that the business world can be chaos and you can be taken advantage of very easily if you're not knowledgeable in it.
Oh. Okay.
And that's what led me to say, oh, this is called show business. We understand the show side of it. We understand how to make movies, but I have no clue about the business side of show
Oh.
business. And
Okay.
so that's what led me to go, okay, cool. Business. I need to study some element of business.
This story is so different than I thought it was going to be. I didn't know any of this. But that just goes to show if you have a feeling or you just have that instinct or intuition, whatever you want to call it, to watch a movie, watch it.
Or not to watch a movie. Because I was leaning towards
Yeah.
Social Network and my conscience was like, no, don't watch that. But watch
Yeah.
this other one. And I was like, okay, whatever.
And then that led you, I think you're saying, to then major in it.
Didn't major in it, no. I'm not I'm not a big major person.
Okay.
So I got an associate's degree in entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Though I was there at the school for like 12 or 14 semesters straight. So, I mean, technically it would have been a major, except for I was doing like 2 credits a semester.
But you focused on business because you felt like I need to learn this.
Yep. Because
Yeah.
honestly, like as I looked at it more and more, the film stuff for me, could be learned through reverse engineering, watching people's bonus features, getting on set with people, experimenting, trying.
The business stuff or the film stuff?
The film stuff.
Oh, okay.
But the business stuff, I didn't find I could. I didn't feel like I had enough resources to be able to reverse engineer business stuff as well.
Yeah.
So I studied entrepreneurship, and the school that I went to, man, I loved every part of it because it was a really small college.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every teacher there in the entrepreneurship program was an adjunct professor. So they worked like part-time somewhere else and then came to school. So it was
Okay.
all like nighttime class stuff. So they would come back and they'd be like, hey, I just sold my business for $600 million. Let's talk about that. And it's like, oh, okay, cool.
okay.
Yeah, I had one like sales teacher who was like, hey guys, I've got to make a call right now to like the executives at American Express. Everybody be really quiet. I'll put it on speakerphone. You can kind of hear how the sales process goes. So we're all like quiet, and he gets calls up, and the gatekeeper's there, and she's like, hey, can I talk to so and so? You'd have to make an appointment with him, and he starts building rapport with her, and he's like, oh well, like this and this and this. She's like, oh, okay, let me pass you on to him, and then boom, passes him on to him, and so it's like
Nice.
we got to experience not
Real world.
real world. Yeah, it wasn't like a bunch of old professors who had once had a business back in the 80s, right? It's like these guys are dealing with stuff today, dealing with taxes today, dealing with laws and regulations of today.
Right. In real time.
Yeah. And so it was extremely helpful.
That's
and
really cool.
For me, I kind of just hate the idea of like cramming a whole bunch of credits into a semester.
Yeah.
Everybody who I talk to who does that, it just doesn't seem like they actually learn anything.
I enjoyed it, but
Yeah.
it probably just
I
works
found
for
people
certain
who
people.
enjoy it, but I haven't found people who like retained a lot of applicable knowledge from that period. So
Okay.
like for me, I guess the best example was as I was going through my entrepreneurship program, I would take 2 classes a semester.
Yeah.
And I would try to pick those classes on like, what's the next thing that I'm struggling with in my business?
Okay.
And so it was like, oh, project management. So I'm learning project management, and I didn't even have to study for my test because the moment I learn it, I'm going and applying it in our business.
Oh, so you started this as you were going to college?
Yes, I started
Oh.
I started COMV when I was 12.
Oh.
Just as kind of like threw a name on videos.
I'm learning so much right now.
Yeah.
I've never heard any of this.
So
Okay.
I started it when I was really young, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's not really a business. It just was, you know, a name. Right?
And what, really quick, what does COMV stand for?
So COMV currently stands for communicating visually.
Okay.
Originally, it stood for a whole bunch of different things because I wanted to do video games, right? So it was like
Okay.
computerized video games, which is
Ah.
kind of stupid because it's like most video games are computerized.
Computerized.
But actually, it started as a little kind of trivia fact. It started as computerized vehicles. I actually wanted to design vehicles that were completely computer controlled and computer assembled.
Oh, you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah, but
The autonomous vehicle curve.
I kind of tell stories through that, so it was like, okay,
Yeah.
whatever. So that's where COMV originally came from, computerized vehicles, right?
Oh, okay.
But I like the name and I like the logo, and so I started just putting it onto everything. So like when I did a video for my friend in high school, it was like, oh, COMV, I've got the logo.
Oh,
And then, like,
oh my gosh.
And after a while, it was like, well, what does it stand for now since it's not computerized vehicles? And so we kind of built a term that fit it.
Oh, okay.
So,
I
yeah.
did not know the history of that. I'm so glad
So
I'm learning
yeah,
this.
so I've always had COMV.
Yeah. So how far when you started going to school, how far were you in the business building process?
I mean,
Like, or was it still kind of something you were
No, it's-
doing professional stuff with it at that time?
yeah, I think a lot of times people try to approach business as like, once I get to these many steps, I'll start the business,
Yeah.
which is the completely wrong way to go
Okay.
because you're just always going to miss opportunities. It's always a secondary option.
Yeah.
One of the best things that our entrepreneur teachers told us, which some people would disagree with, which is okay, is they would say, don't have a plan B. Plan B is just giving you an excuse not to get your plan A to work.
Yeah.
And so there's something that a good business buddy of ours teaches called ZigZag theory,
Okay.
where it's like you got to zigzag back and forth. You have the goal, and it's like, I got to get this business to work. There's never a straight line to starting to working. It's zigzag back and forth. We do some of these products, and it works for a little bit, and we shift over here. So we had already had
Yeah.
COMV going. We were trying to make money off of it. I didn't have any other job. I was trying to figure out how to pay for my bills and stuff with growing a video production company.
Right out of high school.
I mean, I lived in Mexico City for 2 years,
Okay.
serving a humanitarian mission.
Okay.
And so that was like a little bit of a delay.
Okay.
But basically, right after that, I worked demolition, destroying
Oh.
stuff in buildings.
Okay.
Made enough money to purchase a computer so that I could edit all the videos that we were working on.
Oh, okay.
And then from there, that's when I moved to Utah to start studying business. And from there, I've got my computer. I'll borrow a camera from someone and we just start doing stuff. So I actually, at first, I did like website design and graphic design to try to just make some money.
Okay.
But in the meantime, I was still making videos. I just wasn't making money for videos yet.
Okay, so when was the point when you started making money with videos or got like your first job? Because I just asked this because I feel like, you
Yeah.
know, maybe beginners would want to know, like, maybe they have all the equipment, maybe they're building their equipment, maybe, you know,
and
like, what was,
yeah. So the equipment doesn't matter. I mean, nowadays everybody's got cell phones that I've seen people make phenomenal videos with cell phones, but also, you know, like I've been able to get jobs prior where it was like when I was in high school, I did jobs making some commercials and stuff for people, and I didn't own a camera.
How did you do that?
Well, I had helped the high school where I was at. I did some things that got them awarded like a $20,000 grant,
Okay.
and then they bought equipment with that $20,000 grant. And the teacher was like, "Hey, Weston, you basically helped us get this $20,000 with the group of people that helped put everything together. You can use it whenever you want, right?"
Oh, and then
So-
you have a professional grade
yeah,
camera.
yeah. And so it's like there's different ways you can borrow it from people. I filmed a movie when I was doing my humanitarian mission in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
The same thing. It was just found someone with a camera.
Oh.
And it's like it's the techniques that make it look good, not the camera itself.
Okay.
And so there's always a way to find a camera. So like I didn't own a camera until 2012 or 2013,
Okay.
but I'd still made hundreds of videos before that point.
That were paid.
No, not paid. I mean, a lot of them
Yeah.
through high school and stuff, we're just doing them for the passion.
Yeah, and at that point you don't need to be making your own money.
Well, and money's never a motivator.
But what if someone's thinking like, you know, I want to start this thing, but I need to support myself right now.
Yeah, they won't
You
make
know?
it. I mean,
Okay,
like,
all right.
because money's not a motivator.
Okay.
So I've hired people and have paid them a good rate, And unless they're motivated themselves, no matter how much money I pay them, they will never be motivated for doing that job at hand.
Okay.
They have to first
Right.
love it and enjoy
And
it.
be doing it anyways.
And then the money is like, oh, cool, and I can get paid doing this too. So
Yeah.
it's more of a mental thing. Like a person can make it obviously the other direction, but it's just, you're never going to take that leap because again, it's your B option. It's never your A option.
Okay. Yeah.
Versus that's where the zigzag theory comes in, where it's like, for us, it was, I want to make feature films. Costs a lot of money. There was kind of a caveat. So it was like, I want to make feature films and I want to have full control of what the movies are.
So that was always your main passion,
That
was
was-
the feature,
that was
because
the
the
goal.
storytelling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
storytelling, feature films that myself and my team had control over.
Okay.
So I didn't want a producer telling me that I had to do this scene because it's going to sell well, right?
Okay.
So that was the end goal. So I was like, how do we get there? Out of the gate, I can't start doing feature films that are worth millions of dollars because, one, no one's going to give me millions of dollars because I've never done anything, right?
Right.
So then the second thing is like, okay, cool, I pay for my own movies. But the same
Okay.
thing.
And that's where the one I auditioned for probably came in.
Yes.
Was you're probably at that stage where you're like, well, let's make one and show that we can make one.
Yes.
Is what you were probably thinking.
Well, no, not necessarily. At least in my experience, no one hands out money.
Okay.
And even if I can show someone that I've done something successfully, no one's still going to give me money. That's just kind of the way that I've always.
So you weren't necessarily trying to prove yourself with that.
We weren't trying to prove ourselves. We were trying to teach ourselves,
Okay.
right? And actually, and we can get to Navigator, the movie, a little bit later. But the main goal behind that was we were doing distribution through. We believe, and it's still pretty relevant now. We believe that chapter by chapter distribution for films is something that can be explored again.
Okay.
Because people have short attention spans, but they can watch a 10 or 12 minute video on YouTube. So if we do a whole entire feature film for free in 10 to 12 minute segments on YouTube, and then make ad revenue or merchandise revenue or stuff off of that, they don't have to pay directly for the film, but they pay for it indirectly through advertisement and other stuff like that. So there was a financial conception behind what we were doing with Navigator.
Oh, that was your original concept, was to do it in that format, in the
Yes.
10 to 12. I probably knew that. It's been
Yeah,
a few years
it's
and I
been a
don't
few
remember
years.
what you originally said that it was. But that was kind of your thought process of how to be smart about the business side, but also be able to make it as
Yep,
an indie filmmaker.
exactly.
And then, okay. So
So going back to the same thing, so it's
Okay.
a zigzag theory, right? So
Yeah.
it's how do I zigzag back and forth to get to my end goal?
okay.
So we've tried a whole bunch of things. So when I first moved to Utah, I was like, okay, cool. Not making money yet doing videos, but it's like I can do graphic design, I can make brands look good. So started, just putting up things like, hey, I'll design business cards for you for $100, and I paid for my tuition that way.
Oh.
And then it was like, oh, hey, I'll design a website for you for $1,000, and then I paid for something else that way. And just kind of went back and forth in like different ways, different things, and then we got into doing commercial videos where I was like, hey, I'll film an interview for you, and then got paid for that. So it's like,
And which equipment did you have at that point when you first did that? You're working these different jobs, you're making, some money here and there to pay things off as you're going to school with this philosophy that's pretty cool of going to school as you're actually trying to do what you're doing.
Which I think everybody should.
But then that sounds like that was kind of your first job. So
yeah, I mean, it's
like paid, that someone hired you.
It's hard to tell, like in my mind, what's the first job, because there were a lot of jobs that were like, so a really good friend of ours who's a very well-known financial individual, he talks about capital, that oftentimes we mistake it as only being cash. There's only capital cash, investment in capital, stuff like that. He says, I believe that that's so far from the truth. We have something called relationship capital and something called mental capital.
Okay.
So the relationships that we have can get us further than money can.
Okay.
Or
I'm following.
Or mental capital, where it's like I trade knowledge in trade for something. So like in my case, the first camera I got, I had a conversation with my dad and I was like, hey, would you be willing to buy this camera in trade for me doing these things with helping out with some computer repairs and stuff for an office that he was building.
Okay.
And so like I did a trade, right? And then from that, I was like, okay, cool. I don't know anybody in Utah. I'm new to Utah. And so I need to build relationship capital
Okay.
with people who want to make films with me.
Okay.
And so it was like, I need to do a short film. So then my dad was kind enough to give me the camera in trade for what we had discussed. And then from there, I had some friends that I'd met, and they knew Russian because they were from Russia. And I was
Okay.
like, okay, here's a cool opportunity.
How does Russian come into this?
Well, it's just trying to find something that's interesting, right? Something that
Okay.
people can get attached to. So it's like, cool, let's
Okay.
do a Russian movie in Utah, right?
okay.
So it's just interesting, right?
Yeah.
Versus if you just said, hey,
Yeah.
I'm doing a short film, it's like, no one cares.
Yeah, I
But-
do feel like I do like the idea of doing something in a way that kind of stands out a
Yeah,
little bit.
exactly. So
Yeah.
it's like, so we're going to do a film that depicts an American stuck in a Russian gulag camp. So the gulag camps were like prisoner of war camps in Russia. And so it was a little more intriguing, and we got a whole bunch of people on board. And from that, I met Jacob, our writer,
Okay.
right? He had acted in it, kind of got tortured because it was filmed in the middle of like winter and like blizzards and stuff like that.
Yes,
But
as
then-
these things you learn as you do the indie film
Yeah.
learning process.
But so then now he became part of my team, right? And then like from
Okay.
there, we found someone else who became part of the team. And actually, you know, Jason had participated in some of the stuff there, and he later became part of our team. So it's like from this
Okay.
first part of like trying to just do something to build relationship capital, and then people started to participate.
See, that's actually why I have a hard time totally condemning like free indie films.
Oh yeah.
Because I built so many relationships for doing free film after like free short film. You can't monetize short films really anyways.
Yeah, it's hard.
And everybody learns from it, you know? And I feel like with any hobby, golf or a sport or like anything you're involved in, you buy all your stuff, you all get together and do it for free. You
Yeah.
pay to go to some golf club to go golf there. You don't expect to be making millions of dollars like
Yeah.
Tiger Woods. Like, but you all get better as you all go and play together. And, you know,
Yeah,
I just
agree.
you know, I met one person, another person, then someone that you were on a film earlier who was nobody, suddenly 3 or 4 years later, or 5 years later, whatever it is on some big project.
Yeah.
And then has a connection,
And then
then
they're like,
they
oh,
invite
hey,
you to do
Belinda's this
something.
person that I knew, you know. So
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's the way that people approach it.
Yeah.
If they approach it to where if I'm getting paid money and you're not, that's not cool.
Yeah, or if the film is making a bunch of money, but then you're trying not to pay anyone.
Yes.
That is what I think the problem is.
Yeah.
Like, you know, but
But-
I understand, you know, compensating for lunches or, you know,
Yeah.
people
yeah.
that feel strongly about
paying
that.
for food,
Yeah, like that's
communicating, you know,
yeah.
that's the best way.
Gas
And
or
it just has to
whatever.
be communicated. So like
Yeah.
in this case, it was like, hey, this is what we're trying to do.
yeah.
And, you know, if it makes any money, we had agreements with everybody. This is what money you get from it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like all laid out, everybody is communicated with. And,
Cool.
you know, we made a bunch of mistakes through the process, and that was the whole point, was we learned a lot of things about what to do, what not to do. You know, that was back in the day when I would just invite everybody on set.
Yeah.
And then you got tons of people sitting around on set doing nothing.
And everyone's talking,
Yeah,
and you
and
have to
you're
get them
trying
to
to
be
film.
quiet, but you're all there together, and yeah.
So it's like now we've learned to like schedule out
Yeah.
blocks and stuff like that. So it was great because we made a bunch of mistakes, and I built a bunch of relationship capital.
Okay.
So that was the point. So it's like one entrepreneurship teacher that I had told us, he's like, imagine you're on this road. It's a straight road. It's got 20 different stoplights. Do you wait for every stoplight to be green before you start going?
I mean, yes.
Every stoplight?
Stop light or stop sign?
Stoplight.
Stop. Yeah.
You would wait for every stoplight to be green before you'd even start going. So imagine State Street, right?
Yeah.
You're saying State Street.
Yeah.
Okay. First one turns green, but you don't go because the one behind it, the one behind it, the one behind it, the one behind it are still red.
I see what you're saying.
Got it?
Right. No, definitely not.
So the idea is like,
Sorry,
you
I didn't get your
it's
analogy.
okay.
It's like, yeah, you go at the green light
Well,
and not at the
yes.
red light. Sorry, I get it.
Yeah. So we're not waiting for all of the lights to be green.
Yeah.
We just have to wait for the one in front of us to be green.
Right.
And that's often where people fail at business or even dreams.
Okay.
Right? They're waiting for everything. Oh, once
Yeah.
I know how I can make $1 million doing this, I'll quit my job. And it's
Yeah.
like, but you won't, ever.
Yeah. Take the first step.
Yeah.
The little first
so
step.
it's like, well, and
Yeah.
the first step doesn't have to be quitting your job, but the first step is like, you know, you want to do a podcast.
Yeah.
Most people's first step is buy the equipment, which is a horrible idea because it's a step that doesn't actually involve any effort. It just involves money.
Oh, right.
It's like the first step is like, oh, what's the idea? You know, make a name for it. who's the first person I'm going to interview? Try one with your cell phone. And it's like, start figuring out things of what's going to work. And that's what we did. We got together this team.
And that was the Russian project.
Yeah, doing Passage is what the name of the movie was.
Okay.
The short film. And so we got people together and started kind of experimenting with it and started meeting people and started to figure out what worked and didn't work. And I didn't have very much money to pay for it. So, I had I mean, not a very good way to do it, but I didn't pay my heating bill for 3 months because I knew that they wouldn't shut off my heating because it was the dead of the winter. And I knew I could use that money to pay for the movie, and I'd find some way to get the money back.
Okay.
And so, that got me the relationship capital, and then, I was able to find money to pay back the utility bills, and we moved on, right?
Which, not to say that everyone has to do it that way,
No.
but just saying, like, sometimes you make your own sacrifices.
Yes.
So that you can do things.
And you figure out
that you're willing to handle.
Yeah.
That was something that wasn't too painful for you.
Well, also
probably.
what's nice about utilities, and there's a guy, I think, what's his name? Robert Kiyosaki talks about this in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
Where he talks about, he's like, pay your bills last. He's like, I'm not saying don't pay your bills, but you have to pay your bills. So if you buy something that's going to help you progress forward first, you'll actually notice that you find a way to make the bills get paid. So like that was this. It's like, so I paid for the movie first.
Yeah.
And I still had to find a way to pay for my utilities or else I'm going to freeze to death.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like it kind of forces you, and all of a sudden your capacity is expanded.
Yes.
Right?
Which I can see that working very well for some people, but for some people not so well. But the principle is there. The principle prioritizes.
I mean, if you're a wreck,
yeah,
like financially, then it's like, obviously you've got bigger issues to deal with.
Then, yeah.
And unfortunately, you're not going to get very far with other endeavors until you get yourself organized.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in this case, it just doesn't really apply.
But yeah.
Yeah.
But the point is, you prioritize what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
You give up things you're able to give up,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll push yourself to get it done. And then from that project, then where did you go?
Well, and so again, the timeline on those isn't very. It's not like extremely linear. Again, it's a zigzag thing. So I did a few websites, did a few business cards. We showed the movie and we won a number of awards with it.
Oh.
And then, now I started building my team. It
Okay.
really wasn't about, like, we didn't get any money from it. The awards were like, local college stuff.
Yeah.
But people saw it and were
Yeah.
like, oh, wow, this wasn't some stupid horror film, which everybody does.
Yeah.
Like, I was the only one during this film contest that we did that was like a drama-based story, like beginning, middle, end story.
And this is all with the intention that I'm building my business right now.
Well, it's with the intention. It really
Like
never was about the business, but it's with the intention. I want to make feature films that I have full control over. And for me, I just need a team to do that. I feel like every time I meet someone who is like, oh, I write, I direct, I produce, I act, I do this, and it's like, I look at their stuff and it sucks because it's all them, right? There's no collaboration.
Okay.
And I learned pretty early on in life that as soon as I got other people in on my thoughts became so much bigger than I could have ever imagined.
Oh, cool.
So collaboration was a big key. So for
Yeah.
me, it became absolutely necessary to build a team.
Yeah.
And even with Passage, like you can go watch Passage on YouTube.
Yeah. Go watch it on the COMV channel.
Yeah. But,
I will do that after this because I have not seen it.
But when you watch it, you'll realize, oh man, the lighting's pretty bad. Oh
Yeah.
man, the writing is horrible. The dialogue is extremely forced, and that's because I wrote it, right?
And then what did you learn from that? I've heard you talk about that before.
Learn to get a writer,
Okay.
right? And
See, that's pretty impressive that you actually were able to say, like, I'm not a good, kind of look at yourself and be like, where's my strengths?
Yeah.
And not have to be like, I've got to keep writing. I mean, if it's someone's passion, they can always improve at it. But,
To a degree.
I'm the same way where I'm the type of person I'd rather be like, what am I really, really good at?
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather do what I'm already really good at and spend all my time focusing on that and have other
Yeah.
people do things that I'm not really good at and we'll work
or
together.
that they're already exceptional at.
And I'd already acknowledge what I'm not the greatest at, and rather than spend all my time trying to get better at the things that I'm not the greatest at, we'll work as a team.
Yeah, I think there is like a mindset of
Yeah.
like some people put so much effort into, I just want to be the best. I want to be really good at guitar. And it's like, dude, you
Yeah.
can get good at guitar.
Yeah.
But if, for whatever reason, if that's not your natural strength, a person with the natural strength can develop that so much faster than you could without his natural strength.
That's kind of, yeah.
So it's like I've learned a bunch about writing,
Yeah.
being around some of these amazing writers, and I've gotten better.
Yeah.
But every time I write something and I bring it to them, their result is still 10 to 20 times better than what I was capable of.
Okay.
And it's just, it's part of realizing that. It's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool, which that's a whole nother conversation, actually. It's about how you incorporate the, you know, the strengths and weaknesses into the team. But we don't quite have time for that today, but maybe we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah. But so, yeah, that's where the journey went in terms of, you know, did that, built some people, some team members, and then we did another project, and then built some team members and did another project and built some team members. Some of them were paid, some of them weren't. And then, you know, these team members were down for the same vision, right? Money's not a motivator. So they weren't there because they were getting paid money. Sometimes we made money, and almost all of us, actually all of us at the time, we were okay with the idea of like, hey, let's not pay each other. Let's buy something new that's going to help us grow as a company. So everybody was down for putting money back in the company.
Okay.
And so we just started growing it, and you know, the audio guy's like, hey dude, I could really use some new microphones. And we would talk to everybody, be like, hey, is everybody okay not getting paid on this project? Can we buy some new microphones? Oh yeah, dude, let's get some microphones. And so it's like we started, you know, everybody had this vision of like, let's grow it. And everybody, when you talk to them leading the company who kind of like I would say pre-2016, that whole crew, if you talk to anybody who's hired on pre-2016, everybody kind of had the thought process of, hey, this may not work. Like I may never make any money off of this, but I'm going to learn a lot through the process. And so that
free training,
the education capital became kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That's how they got paid. They got paid in knowledge, and they got paid in, I've got a lot of cool things that I can say, hey, I worked on.
Yeah.
Right. And so that became their motivation, and they stuck around.
Yeah, that's why I think it's valuable to be on a set. I mean, you know, these indie projects that are unpaid are not usually, or some, depends, but sometimes they're not done in the professional way, so you don't really learn professional skills. But, you know, being an extra, like, I learned a lot from being an extra. It's paid training of, like, watching what happens on set and how things are done and how people communicate and you know, how the process goes and stuff. So it's like...
And even now when we hire people, I hesitate to hire a person with money involved up front. So usually it's like, hey, we're doing a short film or something. We're looking for a whatever. Would you like to be involved? And we find that getting those people on board for the passion of it, oh, dude, I love that. Oh, you know, and they're working for it. And then it's like, oh, hey, by the way, we've got this paid project. We'd like to have you join us on that.
Interesting.
Like, that's kind of how we tried it. And even recently, as we're doing this feature film right now, we had kind of approached it, or some team members approached finding other people through like you know, we can pay so much per day. And honestly, we just get a whole bunch of losers. Like no one that I would want to hire. Because it's completely about the money up front and not about oh, dude, I love your vision. I love your passion where you're going, and I want to go regardless. And then, of course, we want to pay them. We want to make sure that they are cared for. But they're here for something so much greater. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And that's why I think this isn't an advertisement for COMV, but it's why I really enjoy working for you and for COMV. And I think, you know, there's a good atmosphere in COMV is because, and but I didn't realize all of these aspects to your, like, I've been a part of this, and that's how it happened with me, because I was kind of like on the navigator thing, and then, and that was a passion project more at that point, I remember.
No, definitely.
And then we've kind of come across each other at different times, and I've come in and auditioned a few times, so we had more of a, like...
And you just expressed that you wanted to work with the team, you know, in some capacity.
Oh, I didn't remember that I did that.
And so that was kind of like our same process of like, we enjoyed...
Here's somebody that just likes what we're doing already.
And then it's like, cool, where are your strengths? What can you fit? What can you help with in an area where I'm not good at or someone on my team's not good at? And it's like, you can complement that.
Cool. So. Well, there's so much more to talk about, but I feel like I have all these questions right here that I haven't even gotten to. So maybe we'll do a second session of this.
So that's the backstory,
that's the foundation.
That gets us
and
to the present.
Yeah, next time we'll get into the meat of like what's going on now and like how you're going about it. But yeah, thanks.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks for being here.
Okay.
Cool. See, it's funny because at the beginning